Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Exactly. Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. This is our last program until January the 10th. We'll be off for the next couple of weeks to accommodate the holiday season and the special holiday programming on KCPT, and certainly everyone associated with Ruckus hopes you have a great holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and a happy, healthy New Year. Our festive panel this evening features attorney Steve Marakian, Mary O'Halloran, Yale Abouhaka, and our special guest, Johnson County civic leader and Kansas City Star columnist Steve Rose. I'm Mike Shannon. It occurs to me, if the Mayan calendar is correct, this is not only the last show of the season, this is the last show.
This is it. This is it.
The Kansas City area and the rest of the nation are still trying to make sense out of something senseless: the slaughter last week of innocent elementary school students and their teachers in Newtown, Connecticut. As always happens after a mass shooting, there is renewed talk of ways to make them stop. The Kansas City Star writes that we need better ways to identify people likely to commit mass shootings and get them help before they act. And the Star also says we need to deal with the gun issue. It is too easy in the U.S. for disturbed individuals to obtain weapons capable of killing multiple persons. Well, no one disagrees with those goals, but Mary, does the government have the means to achieve them?
It has the means to achieve one of them, and could, I think, fairly easily do so. I disagree with a lot of the commentary. I tried to listen to all that I could without, I think the nation is in mourning. I think we all have spent our time in front of the television set crying for the parents and the children and the families in that wonderful little town in Connecticut. But the debate so far has one characteristic we haven't seen before, and that is tremendous unity. There is a sense of urgency out there on this question that hasn't accompanied the previous and all too recent shocking killings and murders. Let me just say that I agree with Fareed Zakaria, who wrote in the Washington Post yesterday what I think is a brilliant essay. We can't really do anything, although we should, Yale, as the paper states, increase our mental health services. They're shockingly inadequate for families. We all know that. We all know people who can't get help for their children who are in trouble and who may be violent. But other countries have this, we do all right compared to other countries. Secondly, we're not going to change the culture. Japan has the most violent video culture of any, and they have zero gun violence. The thing that we can do, and the government can do, is to get moving on seriously restricting military-style assault weapons, and to make sure that we give every person, 95% of the American people, support. Background checks for everyone, Mike. That's the big loophole in the current law.
Is it possible the enthusiasm you talk about for getting something done, the urgency that you mentioned, that will fade as time passes on?
And this if they wait, it will fade. But that's why the president, I think, is going to act over the next several weeks, not the next several months. And something will go through Congress, and even many of the NRA members are saying that they're going to support a ban on assault weapons. And I'm a gun control guy. I believe in guns. I have a gun, but I don't think that a person should be carrying around the same kind of rifle that I carried around in Vietnam. It doesn't make any sense to me to have somebody have a cartridge with a magazine able to just mow down people in a matter of seconds. I can't, but I understand that the hunters and the collectors want that macho feeling of owning a gun like that will do that kind of damage.
Steve Marakian, a lot of conservatives think that Obama's goal is to abolish guns in this country. That's why the sale of guns seems to have increased dramatically, especially since his re-election. Do you buy into that theory?
No, I'm not going to try to guess his motivations. I don't buy into that theory. Whether he does or doesn't, it doesn't matter because he's not going to abolish gun ownership in the United States, and he hasn't made any efforts to do that. I am, and I'm not opposed to further bans or restrictions on assault weapons and so forth. I also believe in the Second Amendment, but I have no problem with certain restrictions. But I do want to caution, and this is why I think there will be some action. And this was a horrible tragedy. I don't want to downplay that at all. But I think we also need to keep this into perspective here. You can have all the background checks that you want. Okay, this young man did not go out and buy a series of weapons. He stole them from his mother. Okay, he was a disturbed young man
who obtained them legally.
Exactly. So background checks, assault weapon bans would have had no impact in preventing him. And we need to do the kinds of things we can do to make our schools safe and to make every public place safe. But we need to be careful not to overreact with things that aren't going to solve this problem.
Let's go ahead.
Steve,
let's go ahead and overreact. Because I'm tired of all the pushback from the cowards like Roy Blunt and the cowards like Pat Roberts in the Senate, and the people who won't act on this gun control issue. Let's go ahead and ban all assault weapons. Let's ban all magazines that shoot more than 6. Let's ban all gun shows. Let's do overreact in this case. Because of the people who are pushing for no gun control or a little bit of gun control, or let's be reasonable, or let's wait. You know, not saying you said that, but you know that was one thing you said, Mike. Oh, let's wait.
No, I said
I'll be on the extreme. I'll go ahead and take the extreme side. Let's ban them. Now, Steve, I agree with you. The president doesn't want to take guns out of. People can have a gun, Steve. I'm glad you have a gun to protect yourself. That's good. That's actually kind of what the Second Amendment says. But, you know, to have these assault weapons, that, again, capable of killing multiple people, that's not something we need to have in America. Confiscate guns, absolutely. Buy back guns, absolutely. Let's be honest. Let's get the guns out. It's the gun, stupid.
What confiscate guns? Well, let me be clear. Hang on just a second.
I just said that is my overreaction.
Just to be clear, I did not. Hang on, Steve. I did
Steve.
not say we should delay. I said the urgency passes as time goes by.
Mike, you're right, and let's hope that does not occur.
And that always does happen, and that may indeed be why the NRA is being so cagey. They're having their first press conference tomorrow.
Friday,
I've had nothing to say so far. Fine with me. Don't have anything to say. You know, let's keep this nonpartisan. Let's get going on it, and I think you're going to see extraordinary unity in the country if it doesn't become the typical gun control.
The one part about this thing I always want to say is that I don't believe in is it sounds right. It sounds good to say we should have mental health checks and make sure that those people don't get guns. But I think it's a lot of that's hocus pocus.
Yeah.
It's really going to be impossible to nail a person and figure out who is a possible mass murderer.
And we're going to get into some serious.
We'll
get into some serious civil liberties questions too if you try to get involved in this mental health issue very far.
And that's why I was talking. When I say overreact, I'm talking about exactly the kind of thing Yale just said. We have a Second Amendment. We have laws. We have civil liberties to be concerned about. You can't simply go out and say we're going to ban everything and we're going to ban all guns.
You can pass laws.
All right.
You simply can't do it.
Where did he get the ammunition?
We have to ban further discussion of this topic, at least for tonight. In a toast last week, Yale offered effusive praise for a former mayor and her work for downtown Kansas City. In retrospect, the toast should have been titled Barnes & Noble. But there is no denying that what Mayor Kay Barnes set into motion for the once troubled area is beginning to pay off. Yet Yale and his editorial board colleagues say the work of improving downtown is far from over. They point to, among other things, too little activity at night and on weekends, half-empty or abandoned office buildings, and too many parking lots. So, Yale, you reviewed the decade between 2002 and 2012. What do you hope and expect to see completed downtown in the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, really about 1995, I started writing about the need for more people to be downtown, which I guess, of course, in retrospect, oh, yeah, that's pretty simple to think of. But even I was a little bit surprised that it tripled between 2002 and 2012. I mean, pretty good from 6,000 to about 19,000. The Downtown Council says, hey, 40,000 would be a really good weight, you know, versus a lot of other downtowns. That's about what we need to have. So that's another, I mean, that's a doubling from where they are now. So more people is actually key. There are some housing projects that are going along. I mean, apartment units being built, condos will be built. That's good. The streetcar, which you can poo-poo on a transit line, but as far as a possible development stimulus, I think holds a key to downtown, a key. If you can get some office buildings, some more residential, I mean, if you're going to have a permanent fixed rail car a block from your home or right across from where you're going to live, that's good. So that's another key. Get that thing done in the next 2.5 years on schedule. And I think finally, one of the things is to continue the nightlife, continue the kind of the comeback of, you know, power and lights there. You know, maybe that's going to be a 1,000-room hotel. Maybe that's going to be some more shops in like a funky area. You definitely have to have the crossroads continue to be strong, which is part of downtown after all. So if you add more people, a streetcar line that creates some more density, which is the key of everything, office, residential, and a little bit more, I guess, shopping type activities, nightlife type activities, that will really help.
You're pretty optimistic about downtown's future,
Well,
aren't you?
the one thing Mike mentioned that you didn't address is the fact that the buildings are half empty. And that is a really...
Some of them are, yes.
Yeah, it's a very serious problem.
Yeah.
And as long as there are, and I'm surprised you didn't jump in on this, but as long as there's not tax incentives that are drawing people away from downtown, as well as the fact that these are old buildings, and a lot of people say, I want to go to something brand new on the plaza or in Johnson County. Kansas City is going to be very challenged about filling these buildings.
Steve Marakian, what's the biggest success downtown as far as you're concerned? You work downtown, your office is downtown.
Well, I have been and still am a big supporter of the entertainment district. As someone who works downtown, we love it. We never before we had it there, we would always struggle with where do we go for lunch.
But it's not a financial success yet.
No, it's not, and that's too bad. And that's where I agree with Yale. I also agree with Steve. Is that it's something we're going to have to work on. You have to have more people downtown. I think we need much more retail downtown. If people could shop there, that'd be great. A connector between downtown and the Crossroads District is very important. But I think the development of the entertainment district with the Sprint Center and the surrounding nightlife and that activity is a huge boon for downtown.
I was over to the Kaufman Performing Arts Center a couple of weekends ago,
amazing.
and you cannot,
it's an amazing facility.
You can't diminish how important that is to downtown Kansas City and the image of Kansas City. Mary, why was it that every other mayor from Wheeler on that I knew tried to improve downtown, only Mayor Barnes seemed to really succeed?
Well,
Why?
only Mayor Barnes succeeded gloriously. I mean, she had a plan. Kay was a really marvelous planner. I mean, she is a very, very disciplined thinker about these matters. And boy, what a tenacious politician. If you got in her way when she was developing this thing, you found yourself way, way out in outfield. She had tenacity, she had a vision, she was marvelously talented in bringing people together to do it. Her insistence on doing the Sprint Center and doing it the way she wanted to do it has proved to be the heart and soul of this project. And all glory goes. But on the other hand, Dick Berkeley did some things, and so did
they all
Cleaver.
made a contribution, but she seemed to be the most successful of the mayors trying to deal with downtown. There should be something named for her. There's nothing named for her.
There's a little tiny...
We have Funkhauser and Barnes, and I'm trying to think, going back, that's about the last two mayors have anything named for you.
There's a little
that are
tiny
major.
Piece of the sidewalk in front of the Sprint Center.
Yeah, it ought to go in the Sprint Center.
It's disgusting. It's so little.
Does the name Ray Merrick ring a bell, like maybe a school bell? He's not a teacher, he's not a school administrator, but he is the incoming Speaker of the Kansas House. Merrick is a Johnson County Republican from Stillwell, and Steve Rose says he is the guy who is the last best hope for maintaining the excellence of the county school systems. Steve, give us some background. Why do you think the schools are in jeopardy, first? And second, how can Mr. Merrick rescue them?
Well, the schools are in trouble because they're not getting enough state funding, and because there's a lid, an arbitrary lid on the amount of money that the local districts can raise in order to improve and maintain the excellence of their schools. And there's a lot of politics in the legislature about keeping Johnson County down because the rest of the state doesn't want us to get ahead of what's happening elsewhere. It's just a matter of jealousy. Ray Merrick, who is the first Speaker of the House from Johnson County in the last 30 years, has said that if he's elected Speaker and if he's in a position of power, that he's going to make sure that we lift that lid and get it raised up so that the people locally can raise more money. And the governor has said he wants the lid lifted as well. So now it's a question of whether this man has the clout and the agenda and prioritization to get the job done.
So this is not conservative Republican versus moderate Republican. This is urban Republican versus rural Republican?
Yes, and there's a certain amount of conservative liberal in the sense that there's anti-tax people who are just opposed to the whole concept of that, even if it's just at a local level.
But these are people deciding to impose tax increases on themselves.
That doesn't matter to people like this, though. I mean, Steve, I'm really glad Steve has pointed this out, because one of the things that's really bothered Johnson County over the last few years is if Kansas really starts to slide here on a lot of different measures and taking care of social welfare things and taking care of education, Johnson County has been the economic engine of Kansas for a long time. But to stay that way, they're going to have to continue to have the good schools that attract the really bright people. You know, they're going to have 800,000 people in Johnson County in 2040, supposedly. They won't if Kansas goes down the tubes economically because of Brownback and other tax cuts and all that stuff. So I do hope the league gets elected.
Yeah.
I do hope they approve it, and I hope they have better schools, but I think there's going to be a big fight over it.
If Johnson County schools have to depend on Ray Merrick, and he's our last best hope.
Yeah.
God help us all. You know, where was Ray Merrick when we were cutting the previous $30 million, Steve, and the current decline that we're in? Detailed by the superintendent of Shawnee Mission School District in his farewell speech a few weeks ago, when he listed the things we're not doing. Among them, we don't clean the classrooms every day anymore. We don't have any development for teachers. We're not adding any books to the library.
Classroom sizes are getting larger.
They're getting larger. It's not just a matter of, gosh, we need a few more dollars next year. It's serious.
Last best hope was sort of my phraseology, not yours. And
well, I
in case anybody's
attribute it to
troubled
you.
with it. Steve, what is the majority leader? What is the importance of that role?
The speaker.
I'm sorry, the Speaker of the House.
Well,
what Merrick is going to be.
I would say in a simple way, he sets the agenda. And if he wants to make this high on the agenda, as we've talked about with Brownback and so forth, all is concerned about tax cuts and so forth, and I'm one of those who favors trying to be fiscally responsible. But I agree with Steve, and I've always agreed with the idea that this jealousy between what I consider the rural side of the state and the Johnson County side of the state has been an impediment to education. If Johnson Countyans, people like me, who are fiscally conservative and want to restrain spending in taxation, are willing to tax ourselves for our schools, which I am, we should be able to do that. And I hope that he will take the lead and make this very high on the agenda. Johnson County schools have to be paramount. That's what keeps Johnson County, Johnson County.
And just before we wrap it up, Steve, you wrote a column this morning, Thursday, in the Kansas City Star that appeared to be favorable toward Brownback. Are you feeling okay?
What I said was that he's a, quote, a compassionate conservative, and now we'll find out whether he can stay compassionate as he slices taxes and faces the realities of the things.
But you said he was a good-hearted man who wanted the best.
Well, this is a long story. You're not going to have time to get into the whole editorial. Read the editorial in this morning's Star.
I couldn't find the newspaper this morning.
Well,
that's a problem.
I did read it online.
Nice
Missouri's lieutenant governor, who once wanted to be governor, now apparently wants to be a congressman. Peter Kinder's bid for governor last year got derailed by news accounts of dalliances with strippers and possible overspending of tax dollars on his travels around the Show Me state. So Kinder decided to seek a second term as lieutenant governor and got it this past November. Now, just a few short months later, he apparently plans to run for the U.S. House in a special election in Missouri's 8th District, now represented by Joanne Emerson, who is resigning. The Star's political writer Steve Kraske says that move threatens to taint Kinder's image. Do you agree with that, Steve?
No, I don't. Because I don't see how it can be further tainted. I don't mean that's an attack on Kinder. What I'm saying is this. Okay, who wants to be lieutenant governor, vice president? Who wants to be second any place?
Yeah.
He doesn't want it. Okay, he wants to be in the public eye, so he ran for lieutenant governor. He got it, and so forth. He doesn't want to be there. He wanted to be governor. He didn't win. He would much rather be in Congress. And so, what happens? He runs. He's going to get the nomination. He's going to be in a pretty safe seat. He's probably going to win, okay? If he's had dalliances with strippers, he's perfect for Congress. So why not try it? What's he got to lose is what I would say.
Well, the state won't be harmed by Peter Kinder leaving, and the Congress won't be improved by him going. So I'm not quite sure why Kraske found this also fascinating. The problem here with Joanne Emerson is leaving. I mean, that's a scandalous situation for her. She ran for re-election, was re-elected, and you're telling me that, gee, she didn't have any idea that a week after she was elected, she was going to get this wonderfully well-paid position with the Rural Electrification Association. She's going to be a very well-paid lobbyist. Joanne, you should have known that before you asked the people of your district to elect you. It's part of this awful system where people run knowing they're going to leave so that their pals can pick their replacement, and we don't have to mess around with democracy in between.
Do we know what happens when if a lieutenant governor resigns?
All hell breaks loose.
Because apparently no, but I mean how his replacement is selected. One report I read said that the governor could appoint. Well, you have a Democratic governor, Republican lieutenant governor. Another said the state legislature might get involved, pass legislation making it an action of the legislature deciding who the lieutenant governor is.
Well, I didn't know this was going to be in the test, but I really would actually agree with Steve or whoever said it.
Me.
Who cares about lieutenant governor? I mean, seriously, it's
well,
not that important.
It's
I know they have a state role, but it's not.
No,
it's obviously not a stepping
presides
stone.
over the
it's
state
not a stepping
Senate.
stone for anybody.
Well, it can't be a stepping stone for.
Well, I guess for Peter Kinder.
Before we run out of time, a man whose name has become a verb, Robert Bork, died this week, and he's well respected, is he not, Steve, in the legal community? He was nominated for the U.S. Supreme Court by President Reagan in 1987.
Yeah, he was treated very badly by Ted Kennedy primarily. There's some famous comments by Kennedy talking about Robert Bork's America, which were just completely wrong, and they were vicious. Robert Bork was a conservative jurist, but within legal circles, by those who are not trying to politicize on either side, they would say Robert Bork was a brilliant man. His opinions were generally well received. They were well thought out. You can disagree with them, Mary. You can disagree with them, as we do.
Boy,
thank God the Senate did.
As we do. But I'm telling you, within legal circles, you can say, I can look at an opinion by Justice Douglas and disagree with it, but I would not say that he was a bad man.
He taught at Harvard, did he not, for 2 decades?
Robert Bork was a brilliant man and a great jurist.
This is a man who made his final case for going on the Supreme Court based on the constitutionality of the poll tax. I mean, the idea that Robert Bork would have been ruling on civil rights and human rights.
Mary has no idea what she's talking about.
I know a great deal about this case.
It is his name that is the source of the verb to bork when somebody is borked or borking someone when they are seeking elective or appointed office.
He was a disaster.
It is time now for Roast and Toast, where each Ruckhead has the soapbox for 30 seconds. Let us begin with Mary.
Well, I'd like to toast here at the end of the year Chris Kobach for the fact that he helped President Obama get elected by giving such good advice on relations with immigrants in this country to Mitt Romney, and he took his advice on self-deportation. Secondly, I'd like to toast Kathleen Sebelius for the hard work that she did to get Obamacare sort of almost enacted prior to the election, so enough people saw some positive results. And also, I'd like to toast the President of the United States. What a year he had. He is Times Person of the Year. He opened his campaign for president in Osawatomie, Kansas, talking about everyone having a fair shot at the good life in America.
Well, because my column is probably buried in the driveway at your home right now this morning, I just want to make sure I give a toast to both Raytown Superintendent Alan Markley and Kansas City Mayor Sly James for, at least so far, trying to work out a good settlement on the whole soccer TIF dispute in Swope Park. Basically, Raytown School District should not have to pay millions of dollars to build soccer fields outside of the Raytown School District lines, and it looks like the city's coming around to that good view. Toast to both.
My toast is to all of us here for choosing to spend our last full day on Earth with Mike on the set of Ruckus. Unless the Mayans are wrong, which is possible, though highly unlikely, it all ends tomorrow. So I would say that your presence and mine shows one of two things. Either our commitment to pompous bloviating trumps all else, or our lives are so pathetic that we have no better way of spending our final hours than being here. For me, it's all about the bloviating.
Clearly.
So I'd like to toast the United States Post Office, particularly this time of year when they're out working their rear ends off getting the mail delivered. They're not perfect, but I think that it is ridiculous to have the post office have to, quote, pay its own way. And I think the United States government should subsidize the United States Post Office like they do the armed forces. I think it's something that the nation needs to provide, and I think it's, I give them all the credit in the world for getting it right about 99.99% of the time they get the mail there.
Finally, I would like to toast the Hallmark Company for creating this elf Christmas tree ornament. Aside from the fact that my wife says it looks like me, it will record your voice and then let you hear yourself sounding like an elf. And that is Ruckus for this week. Be sure to join Nick Haynes for Kansas City Week in Review Friday evening at 7:30.
On behalf of the Rockettes and the Ruckus crew, I'm Mike Shannon wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you on January 10th, 2013.
Goodbye.
Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.